One of the things that actually helped me a lot through my life, funnily enough, is kind of watching what you just showed on the screen there, which was I watched a video when I was younger of them just zooming out from Earth.
Yeah.
And we talked about feeling insignificant earlier. I mean, there's some of them here. I'll just pick one at random, like this one here. Well, it's just a lady sat on some grass, and she zooms out further and further and further. And when I saw this, I must have been, it was a video like this one. I must have been about 14 years old. And at first I had the thought that a lot of people might have, which was, like none of this matters because we're so insignificant on the grand scheme of things that, like, what's the point? And then I had this other thought, which has stayed with me ever since, which is it liberated me from worry.
Yeah.
Because if all of my worries are just a speck in this bigger thing, which are a speck in a bigger thing and a speck in a bigger thing, it meant that I could take more risks in my life.
Yeah.
And not be encumbered by what will happen if and what will people think and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which kind of liberates one to go and pursue whatever they want to pursue.
Yeah. Carl Sagan with the pale blue dot, if you're familiar with that terminology, he had the Viking spacecraft when it was going by Saturn, turn around and take a shot of planet Earth through the gossamer rings of Saturn. And in that photo, the Earth is this little tiny pale blue speck, sort of as we saw in the film as it went by there. And he, in this wonderfully poetic passage, described how everything we care about, everything we love, everything we fight, the rivers of blood that has been spilled to conquer a tiny little fraction of a pixel in space, that gives you a setting where the concerns that you're mentioning of an individual human life, of countries, of nations, you realize how utterly small it is in the cosmological setting. And again, that to me isn't insignificance. As you were saying, it's liberation.
We have this spectrum of, I guess, confidence in front of us here. And on one end of it, it says low confidence. On this end, it has high confidence. And there's 5 little figurine type things there next to you.
Yeah.
And what I would like you to do is to place them in line with your confidence that the thing is real. So the first one that I'm going to ask you to place is those mini scales which represent free will.
This guy here, free will?
That's free will. Do you think humans have free will? Are you low confidence or high confidence? I'll push over further towards you so you can...
I do not think we have free will, and I have high confidence in that assessment, which I guess means low confidence that we have free will.
What is free will?
To me, free will is really just the everyday sense that you are the ultimate author of your actions, that the buck stops with you when it comes to the decisions that you make for how you are going to respond one way or another in the moment-to-moment existence of life. I don't think that freedom of the will is real. And I can give you a quick sense why. It really is an extension of everything that we've already spoken about, which is, when I look at you, I see a man, but I also imagine that I'm looking inside you and I see your particles. And so you are a man-shaped collection of particles. That is what you are. And each of those particles and the agglomeration of those particles are fully governed by the laws of physics. I don't say that we have those laws yet. We have an approximation to them with Schrodinger and Einstein and all those folks. But I do believe that there is an ultimate set of principles that guide how your particles behave. You do not have the capacity to intercede in the lawful progression of your particles. So if you raise your hand, it is not you who's doing that. It is the laws of physics guiding the particles in your brain, sending an electrical signal down your arm, causing your muscle to contract or expand, resulting in your hand going up. You don't control the laws that govern those particles.
I didn't make the decision?
You did not. You felt that you did. And so the feeling that you and I and everyone else have, that we make decisions and those decisions result in our action, it's a seductive sensibility. But no, I do not think that you are the place where that choice, if you will, occurred. The choice is actually within the lawful unfolding of the particles. And I can't control that particle motion. Therefore, I can't control the decision. Therefore, I don't control the motion of my arm.
Therefore, I don't control my life?
You don't, in some sense. If you buy into it fully, it can be paralyzing. Or you can recognize it, which I do, and I say, okay, within that structure, I'm going to live my life as fully as I can. And I am able, not always, because I'm a human being, but in the best of moments, I can pull back and have a certain objectivity about the things that happen in my life. And I observe them at a remove, as opposed to being completely wrapped up in the moment to moment. Now, that doesn't make me an aloof person. It doesn't make me somebody who somehow is detached. No, it's just I can analyze the world at multiple levels.
So who is and what is guiding those particles to make the decisions that those particles are making?
The best I can say, and I think the best that we can say right now, is that there is some body of law. Now, what does that mean, a body of law? There is some patterns that repeat in the world. Now, you drop an apple and it falls on Newton's head repeatedly. You can rely upon certain kinds of particle motion because there's certain regularities in the world. And the regularities in the world are what I mean by the laws of physics. They may be articulated mathematically. Our best guess is, as of today, that math is the best language we have for describing those laws. But out there, I think there are some fundamental patterns. And those patterns ultimately are what determine how the particles move. And so that's all that we are. We are a body of particles that move. And that's responsible for why things do what they do. And remarkably, our brains allow us to self-reflect, to look at what we do and analyze it. And when we do that, we tend to ascribe authorship to ourselves. But that's a story that we tell ourselves. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel part of the unfolding. It perhaps has an evolutionary utility that if you feel responsible for what you're doing, maybe it helps you to survive. Maybe that's why this way of thinking was inculcated over the course of generation upon generation. Maybe there's an evolutionary explanation. But fundamentally speaking, I don't think it's real.
I was going to say then, well, maybe the particles are trying to survive in this form. But even as I thought about that, I thought, so maybe my particles are making the decisions they make to raise my hand, to go on a holiday with my fiance, to have kids because they want to survive in this form. But actually, I disappear at some point.
Yes.
But my particles don't.
Right.
They then become dirt or someone else or whatever, or
yes.
a child. It doesn't seem that they care much about necessarily being in this form.
They don't. I don't think they do. So I don't think they care. I don't even think the word care is applicable to them. The notion of caring is a high-level construct that only emerges when the particles are configured sufficiently to yield a complex information processing system called the human brain.
And consciousness.
And consciousness. Now, if you ask me where consciousness comes from, I don't know, sort of as we discussed before. I think it's just physical processes. Let's go with that. Assuming that's the case, this conscious self-awareness invents the idea of caring because it's a useful concept for us to organize our lives and our experiences. This conscious self-awareness invents all the other words: happy, sad, meaning, purpose, morality, activity, action, choice, decision, freedom, will, all human-made. These concepts don't exist out there in the universe. There's no notion of freedom of the will floating in space outside the Andromeda galaxy. This is a selection of ideas that we humans as a species have found to give us utilitarian advantage in organizing our experiences. That's all that it is. That doesn't diminish it. I don't go around trying to erase my sense of self. I accept my sense of self, but I also see it for what it is, a human construct.
Does that mean that consciousness and everything that I am could theoretically just be, as you said earlier in the sort of pessimistic version of events, random, totally random. Like consciousness itself was just the particles came together over a long enough period of time, and then they found this form, and now I can...
It could. And maybe it was random and happened only once on this planet, right? I mean, again, maybe there is life out there, and maybe there's even complex life out there, maybe even like as big as us or bigger. But maybe when we encounter those life forms, they have no idea of what it means to have an inner world.
This, I think it was a physicist said to me that it was a bit of a spiritual, esoteric idea, but they basically said to me that they think consciousness it could come from this sort of original source, and it's divided itself up into the humans, the bees, the birds, to go out there and understand the nature of the universe.
Yeah.
And then when we die, we kind of return to the source. But, I'll give birth to a baby. They'll go off into different corners of the earth and look at different things and have different experiences. And it's all feeding back into this central consciousness, which is sole objective is to understand itself. And it's funny because I heard this idea from this physicist. And then I was in somewhere in Europe, and I was driving down the road, and I saw all of these tourists just like looking up at a mountain. And they're just like looking out at the sea, and they were looking at things that were interesting.
Sure.
Which is what we do as humans.
Yeah.
I thought kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
That we're actually just like consciousness is observing.
There's a philosophical position called idealism. And idealism holds that the fundamental truth of reality is consciousness. But fundamentally, everything that I've seen throughout my life suggests to me that that's not how it is. I can't prove it. I hope it's true. But if you ask me what I think is really true, I think that consciousness is something that emerges when there's a sufficient amount of information processing that itself is carried by the motion of particles through various interconnected structures.
Is my dog conscious?
It is, but I think it's got a different level of consciousness. You can tell when they're feeling good, happy or sad or frustrated or intrigued. The ears change, the eyes change, the shape of the face. You can't help but ascribe an inner world to that. And again, I always worry that the dogs, like the fish, or like these humans, think they're so damn special, but we actually are well developed, well beyond them, and we're just playing along. In fact, in New York City, who picks up the poop, right? We pick up the poop, so the dog walks along as like this, king-like being, and we behind them with these little plastic bags. So who's really in charge? But putting that to the side, I do think that the dogs and the cats have a level of conscious awareness. And I think you go down through the animal kingdom. If you were to ask me, does an insect have consciousness? Then I'm less clear. I suspect not. If you ask me whether a virus or a bacterium has consciousness, I don't think so. I don't think there's adequate information processing capacity in those structures to have the kind of rich inner world that we would normally ascribe to a conscious being. But that's all that I think it is. I don't think that there's some uber universal consciousness that's out there that we go back to when we die. Not that I wouldn't like it. I just don't think it's true. Moreover, I can understand why humans would introduce this idea. Again, it's Ernest Becker and the denial of death. How wonderful to say, yeah, our bodies die, sure, but our consciousness, it doesn't die. Our consciousness, it floats off and it rejoins the universal. Wow, that makes you feel good. And we tell these stories that make us feel good, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, I do think it's important that we see them for what they are, which are human-authored stories to combat our own recognition that we are mortal beings.
Moving on to the next one is the universe there on the little card. We talked about this a little bit, and you've given your answer already, but do you think the universe is infinite?
I don't know, but I'm going to put it sort of around here. In fact, lately, I should tell you, the work that I've been doing has imagined that the universe is not infinite. So I've been doing a lot of scientific exploration with mathematics with a handful of colleagues and the kind of weird things that can happen if it's not infinite. And it's very interesting. There's a lot of mileage that you can extract from a universe that you go off in that way and you wind up coming back to your starting point, much like you would on the surface of the earth. It's a finite extent. But if you ask me, in my heart of hearts, if I was forced to make a choice, I would say infinite with a medium level of confidence.
What about, do you think life could exist outside of Earth? And I'll say intelligent life.
Intelligent life.
Do you think intelligent life exists outside of Earth?
Yeah, so for intelligent aliens, I'm going to definitely go a little bit more over here. I put it as it's possible. Obviously, it happened once, therefore it could happen again. Obviously, intelligence is not somehow contradictory to the way the universe evolves. It can support conscious and intelligent beings, but I think it may be special.
Is there not a bit of a contradiction here, though, with these two things, that you think the universe is infinite?
Oh, when I say this, I should say within the observable universe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So in the entire expanse of the universe, as opposed to the observable part, which again is a part that even in principle we could have connection with, then yeah, I would absolutely put it in exactly the same place, because there'd be copies of us out there. But if we talk instead about, are we going to get a signal? Are we going to be visited? Then I put that at much lower confidence. And in fact, I would say one thing about the visitation, because you mentioned the interest that people have on aliens. I find it really odd that people are taken with these photographs that are meant to sort of just catch the alien ship as it was racing. If an alien could travel across the galaxy, say, to reach us, they are so technologically advanced that the idea that our archaic airplanes and their cameras could capture a photograph of them is ludicrous. They will be able to evade us so simply that the idea that we just barely caught them on our cameras is absolutely ridiculous. Moreover, if they could travel to us, again, I'm talking about traveling across light years, right? I mean, our galaxy, 100,000 light years end to end, right? To be able to traverse that requires a level of technological sophistication that is so beyond anything that we can do. To imagine that beings that advanced would be interested in us, so interested that they would kidnap us. That'd be like saying, I was walking to the park yesterday. Don't tell anyone, but I kidnapped an ant. There's an ant walking along and nobody was looking, and I sort of kidnapped it. We don't do that because it's not interesting. Similarly, we would not be of interest to the aliens because they're so incredibly advanced that this idea that they're abducting us is just ludicrous.
Is it going to be possible? We were talking earlier on about the possibilities that artificial intelligence is going to unlock. Is it possible within the laws of physics for us at some point, when we get sufficiently intelligent, to travel across the universe?
It's a great question. It's a tough one. So if the technological advancement was simply making our ships faster, no. Because even if you travel near the speed of light, which is the ultimate speed limit, to go to the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, would take you 4 years, even at the speed of light, to get there, right? And then if you actually want to go not just to the nearby star, but to actually across the galaxy, again, you're talking 100,000 years to do that. So that brute, straightforward approach will not succeed. However, there are exotic ideas of things called wormholes. You've probably encountered. These are these ideas of a wormhole is like a tunnel. What is a tunnel? On Earth, a tunnel is a shortcut that gets you from here to here without having to go over the mountain, right? Tunnel it right through. There's an analogous idea that people floated in the universe, where to get from here to there may be a shortcut, a kind of tunnel that connects them and is a quicker way of getting from point A to point B. We don't know if these tunnels through space exist. We don't know if they existed, whether we could actually get through them. And so it's a highly speculative idea. But if they do exist, and if we one day can create them and manipulate and control them, then at least in principle, we could take two distant locations, like this corner and this corner. But imagine that we could manipulate this surface, fold it together to bring the two corners next to each other, and build a little tunnel between them. Then we could go from one end to the other by going through that shortcut. That's a very far out idea.
But there's no evidence of
There's no evidence at all. Now, let me just say again, much as we discussed earlier, this idea is not just some wild late night musing of a physicist. It comes out of the math of Einstein's general relativity that these wormholes could exist. In fact, Einstein himself in 1935 wrote a paper with a colleague, Nathan Rosen, where they introduced this idea that we now call wormholes. We're no further along in knowing whether wormholes are real than Einstein was back then. We've analyzed them, we've developed the mathematics. Science fiction has taken this idea, in Interstellar, I believe Matthew McConaughey goes through a wormhole. Jodie Foster went through one in Contact. They're a ubiquitous feature of science fiction trying to allow for the kinds of travel across the galaxy that otherwise would be impossible. But whether this is actually real, nobody knows.
What about time travel?
Yeah.
Can we travel backwards in time within the laws of physics?
Yeah, that is the way of phrasing it. Because if you ask me the reverse question, can we travel to the future? I would say, yeah, that kind of time travel we're highly confident of. So I don't have a little thing for that. But let's call, this is time travel to the future, right? I put it very, very high confidence for that.
You think we can travel to the future?
Yes, in principle. Executing it, a different story. But one of the things that emerges from Einstein's special and general relativity is that the way time elapses for you and for me is variable, depending upon how fast we move and the strength of the gravity that we experience. So for instance, if I want to see what your life would be like 60 years from now, Einstein laid out a blueprint for how I could do that. I build a spaceship. I travel out into space near the speed of light. I go for a certain period of time, maybe about 6 months. I turn around, I come back 6 more months. I come back, I'm 1 year older, 6 months, 6 months. But you will be 60 years older if I traveled sufficiently close to the speed of light, because my clock would be ticking off slow compared to your clock. Your clock went through 60 years while my clock went through 1 year. There is no physicist who knows what they are talking about who disputes this. Now, it's not controversial, but if you then say to me, well, do it, I'd say, I don't know how to build a spaceship that goes that fast, at least not yet.
You would only have aged 1 year.
Correct.
But I would have aged 60 years.
Correct.
Could you then go back?
I don't know. And if you were to ask me to give my confidence on going back, I would say it's pretty low. People have written proposals for how you could go back. They do involve things like wormholes. That is one possibility, because if you have a tunnel from one point in space to another, if you then move the openings at different speeds, their clocks will tick off at different rates. This clock may be before this clock. So if I travel this way, I'm going one way in time. If I'm traveling that way, I'm going the reverse way in time. But again, like we said before, we don't know if wormholes are real. If they are real, you might in principle be able to travel back. But if you ask me, do I think that you can? Low confidence that you can travel back.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.